Okay, well, I want to introduce Tony. Tony is a author of the Victor McCain series and some others. Victor McCain's the one I can remember because that's the ones I'm reading. He is the owner of Hydra Publications, and he's also a screenwriter. So I attended this workshop that he gave a month or so ago. It was excellent, and I really felt that it might be something that other people would enjoy hearing. So, Tony?
No pressure at all with that.
No.
Yeah, I'm the creative writer in residence for the Oldham County Schools Art Center, and so I gave a series of workshops. So you want to be published, so you want to write a novel, and so you want to write a screenplay. And Carol came and asked me to do this. So again, a little bit more about me. As you mentioned, I write the Victor McCain thrillers. I'm the co-writer of the Samantha Tyler thrillers. For those of you who are an older age, who remember Irma Bombeck and If Life's Bowl Cherries, what about doing in the pits? I have a book of humor called Tell Me More, My Conversations with Scammers, Clerks, and My Twins. So, and it was my homage to Miss Bombeck. And then I'm also, as Hydra Publications, we've got 7 different imprints. We publish everything from mysteries that you guys write, sci-fi, horror, faith-based, children's books, poetry, a little bit of everything. And then I got into screenwriting. And the quick story about how I got into screenwriting is in 2018, a group from Atlanta wanted to make a movie out of The Hand of God, my first book, the Victor McCain series. They got Keith David, the actor, interested. They said, we need a screenplay, and I can give you a month, but we really need it in 2 weeks. And we can't hire somebody else to write it. We need to hire you to write it because you know the story. We got to get something to Keith to see if he will sign a letter of intent to be involved. So I wrote it in 15 days. My family, one of my twins is here, Katie. They were very happy it was finished because I'm usually very easy to get along with. But for 15 days, we're like, leave me alone. I got to write. But I found out writing a screenplay. I co-wrote the first screenplay with Sarah Gardiner because she had written screenplays I had not. And I learned a lot, and there's things I wish I'd known before I started. And that's kind of what this workshop is about. Because if you want to write screenplays, I'm going to give you the tips that from my mistakes and things I learned from and what you need to do to get started to write a screenplay successfully. Because there are tips that will make your life a million times easier. And so my next screenplay, the first one I wrote solo, is called Songs Bloody Harlan. It's about the life of Lee Pennington when he was in Harlan County, Kentucky in 1967, teaching a poetry class. And I'm going to give you the log line now. We're going to talk about log lines a little bit, but the log line of the movie is future poet laureate Lee Pennington in 1967 goes to Harlan County to teach a poetry class and is rewarded with a contract taken out on his life. Right? So that gets people kind of interested. But when I wrote this one, the Songs of Bloody Harlan won Best Screenplay at the Mansion Film Awards, which is nationally judged. It's a local film contest, but they have national judges for the screenplay. And then the Hand of God screenplay that I co-wrote with Sarah Gardiner won Best Horror Screenplay at the LA Film Awards. So I've written 2 screenplays, and they both won major awards. And as a novelist, most people here does everybody here write novels? Most of you? Going from being a novelist to a screenwriter is a transition. It's not necessarily easy. I got lucky in the fact that when my book first came out in 2013, there was already movie interest. So I've spent many years thinking about how I need to make this a screenplay, because you gotta lose some of your darlings, you've got to cut some of your plot out. You can't have everything. You just can't. But I really enjoy writing screenplays. One, easier, because it's not as long. You shouldn't write a screenplay when you're a beginning screenwriter longer than 120 pages. But it's just fun because it's mainly dialogue, and what I really like to write is dialogue. And you give a little screen description, tons of character dialogue, and then go on with this. I really enjoy screenplays. But what we're going to start with, and I think most people, did you get a copy via email of the
Yeah, did anybody not get a handout or bring a handout? I've got a few extra.
There's a,
I do know it, but
okay. So let's start out with, you should ever, because we're readers, right? We're novelists. We like to read. You should read about writing a screenplay before you write one. And I think the best book on screenplay writing is Save the Cat. And there's a lot of great screenwriting books, none of them are as good as Save the Cat. They're just not. And for those of you who don't know the term, the guy who wrote the book, I apologize, I don't remember his name, but he says in the first part of your movie, always have your character, even if it's an anti-hero, save the cat. Because that way, it's a way for the viewers of the movie to have some investment in your character. So in my case, at the beginning of The Hand of God, Victor McCain catches a bounty hunter, catches a fugitive that he's looking for as a bounty hunter. But because of a thing going on with his mother having cancer, Victor lets him, this is on a Friday, Victor lets him go and says, you be in my office on Monday morning, or next time I hunt you down, I'll just shoot you, that kind of thing. But it shows Victor's compassion and gives you a reason to kind of pull for him. I'm going to use a very famous example of the other side. And if you have not watched Game of Thrones yet, I'm going to spoil it for you. I'm sorry. But at the very end, the whole show is about who's going to sit on the Iron Throne, right? Who's going to be the new king or the new queen? And there are like 10 people they can choose from. They're all people we've been cheering for the entire series. And they give it to Bran, who never saved the cat. People were really upset about his choice. Like, why did you choose him? Because never in the show did he ever save the cat. He was medieval Google. He gave info, he saw stuff, he saw the future, he saw this, but he never really actually did anything that made you emotionally invested in him, because he never saved the cat. You know, Tyrion saved the cat, you know, Sansa, Jon Snow, Arya, you know, they had all done things that made you want to pull for them. And a lot of the reasons why I think the ending of Game of Thrones was so deflating, they picked the wrong person. He never saved a cat. But that book will give you everything from learning about movie beats, learning about, you know, how to write a log line, learning about every part of screenwriting. He goes over in great detail. And if you've never read a screenplay, or even if you have and you have not read this book, you really need to. So that's your first start, is to read Save the Cat. And then also, having the right screenwriting software is really important. If you're going to be a screenwriter and you want to do this seriously, I would recommend Final Draft. It's about $300. It's not cheap, but it
was on sale for $199 not too long ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Watch for that. Because there are free software you can use. They're just not as good. Final Draft will format your screenplay perfectly. It has a thing that I make great use of. There's a fix your screenplay feature, which will scan your screenplay for formatting errors and spelling errors, that kind of stuff. So, and most of the industry uses Final Draft. So when you want to submit, let's say you find an agent, hey, do you have a Final Draft copy of your screenplay? I got one done by Joe Schmo Software, and he's like, no, you buy Final Draft and
I
redo
have a
it.
question. With Final Draft, can you work offline on your script,
Sure.
or do you have to be online? I downloaded Writer Duet, which you get 3 free scripts on there before you have to buy it to add more, but you can't work offline on it. You have to
Matter of fact, for a desktop, there is no online version for Final Draft. I have found out because one of my twins has gotten to this. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But there is a mobile version that doesn't have the full features, but you can use it to write on an iPad, and that's what Matt does. Take this off, I'm banging my watch on this metal table. But there's a mobile version, and it's only like $10. But having said that, you don't get the full functionality of it. You really need to write on a desktop or on a Mac or on a laptop so you can download the actual program. The Final Draft will make your life, at $300 is well worth the money you're going to spend. If you want to do this for a living, highly recommended that you do Final Draft. So, other thing, before you get started, read other screenplays, like the one I dropped off here today. I never read the screenplay, and I need to write a chase scene, car chase scene. Yeah, I've watched a bunch of them, but how do you write it in a screenplay? Well, I went out and found the screenplays for Bullet, Baby Driver, The French Connection, Gone in 60 Seconds. And I read the way they wrote their car chase scenes in their screenplay. And I went, oh, that makes sense. So read some screenplays before you get started, whatever genre, whether you want to write romance or mystery, or you want to write sci-fi fantasy. Find some screenplays in that genre that have done well. Now, you can write one that have done poorly too to figure out what they did wrong, but you'll learn a lot more from people who got it right. But find some screenplays and read them. Stephen King says to be a good novelist, you've got to be a good reader. And I believe that's true because you'll see what people do right and what they do wrong. But you got to read screenplays before you get started. There's a bunch of them available for free. If you just Google free screenplays, romance, and a list will come up where you can read these screenplays. And also, as we're going along, if you ever have any questions, just see, I keep doing this because I think I got my glasses on. I took them off. Feel free to interrupt me and ask questions, but make sure you read screenplays. And then the other big thing is before you get started, come up with what's called a log line, or for you writers, the blurb for your movie. Log line should only be 1 to 2 sentences. Generally, 1 is better. And I'm going to read you a couple and see if you recognize the movies, but these are well-written log lines. A Las Vegas set comedy centered around 3 groomsmen who lose their about-to-be-wed buddy during their drunken misadventures, then must retrace their steps in order to find him. It's The Hangover. Cop comes to LA to visit his estranged wife for Christmas, and her office building is taken over by terrorists. But again, one of the things we're going to talk about log lines, I'm going to read you further, then we're going to talk about what makes these great log lines. A computer hacker learns from mysterious rebels about the true nature of his reality and his role in the war against its controllers. That's the Matrix. The aging patriarch of an organized crime dynasty transfers control of his clandestine empire to his reluctant son. That only went on to win, a bevy of Academy Awards with The Godfather. And a man creates a strange system to help him remember things so he can hunt for the murder of his wife without his short-term memory loss being an obstacle. And maybe everybody saw that when that was Memento, which I really love because they told the movie in reverse, which was, so reading that screenplay is really kind of interesting to do. But for those who don't know, an insurance investigator suffers an injury and his short-term memory doesn't take. Long-term stuff remembers. So he tattoos clues all over his body. And every time he wakes up, he rereads the clues to try to find the killer of his wife. And that's what he's doing. But it shows you the end and goes backwards to how it all started. But in a log line, you want to have, it helps to narrow down your focus. So writing the log line before you write your screenplay keeps you focused. And keep your log line to 1 sentence. And a good log line also tells you who the movie is for. And there's generally 4 things that you want in your log line. You want irony. A guy goes to spend Christmas with his wife whose building is taken over by terrorists. Christmas terrorists. There's some irony in there. You want a compelling mental picture. An organized crime boss handing over the business to his reluctant son. You can kind of see in your head how that might work. You want to have your audience and cost in mind. And then have a great title. We're going to go over movie titles a bit too, but like Psycho. That tells you all you need to know about that movie, right? And so, but with a log line, if you can't, because this is all you're going to pitch to somebody, right? I'm going to pitch my screenplay to an agent or to a director or to a producer, and you need to tell them what it's about. I'm not going to mention the guy's name. It is very morbid here. I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but he's learned to be better. But when to pitch his book, they tell you got to pitch your book in 30 seconds, right? Elevator pitch, 1 elevator to the next. And when this gentleman first started to pitch his book, it's about this guy who's getting married. And the whole pitch went just like that. It took minutes. And you can tell the person who's talking to, the eyes were already glazing over. And I went, and this book, by the way, my wife says it's her favorite book we've ever published. It's called Interstate Providence by Samuel Miller. And I'm sure Sam doesn't mind me outing him because he does a really good job. The book is fantastic. If you haven't read it, it's from Hydra Publications. Just plug there. But the basic premise is Hunter is off to marry the boss's daughter, finds out she's gotten cold feet, and the boss fires him. So he goes on a one-way road trip across the country, meeting strange characters and his estranged brother. So it's kind of, and at the end, he's joined by the ghost of his dead father. And you don't know at the end of the book, is it really his father or is he going nuts? Short, simple. When we're pitching novels, it's a couple sentences long. But there goes a nice, simple pitch that gets people interested. So when you're doing your log line, you come to me and say, hey, I've got an idea, Tony, for a movie. Well, what's your log line? And you give it, I'll go, the pitch for the hand of God. Bounty hunter Victor McCain finds that his only brother Mike is sold as sort of the devil, is given 24 hours to find a woman that's stolen something Satan wants back, or his brother goes to hell. And again, the Lee Pennington movie in 1967, Lee Pennington goes to Harlan County to teach poetry. is rewarded with a contract taken out on his life. Poetry, hitman, the irony, but it also, you can see what that movie's gonna be about. And now you're not supposed to do this. I'm gonna do it anyway. Dead Poet Society means Justified. Don't ever start out by telling somebody, my movie is Die Hard meets Stephen King. Don't do that. They tell you not to do that. I occasionally do that. But on a good log line, once you have your log line down, it helps you as a screenwriter focus on what you need to write. But you really need to have your log line before you write your screenplay. So that way you know what your screenplay is about. And then practice it on people. One of the things they suggest in The City of the Cat, the author talks about how he's in the coffee line at Starbucks and he will pitch his new log line to people to see how they react. Because it's a cross section of people, older, younger, and he'll get along and he says, if I see him start to go, yeah, whatever, dude. I know I'm not hitting, but if they go like, that's all you react. I did the Songs of Bloody Harlan log line. There's reward with the contract taken on his life. That switch. See people kind of go, oh, that's kind of cool. And you can practice your log line on your friends, on your family, but have a very good log line because you're going to need to use it to pitch. And now this is geared towards you writing a screenplay and then pitching it to somebody. Because, you know, we can all write screenplays just because we want to write one, but wouldn't we all like to make money doing it? That's kind of what we want to do this for. So, and also your title says it all. Oh, I think the other thing I need to show, is it down here yet? That'd be the next thing. All right. It's in this section. Your title must say it all. So again, talking about Psycho, right? And some of the other movie titles like The Usual Suspects, which I thought was a No Country for Old Men, Dead Poet Society, and Psycho. You know, having your title, and I'm going to show you where I think we made a mistake for Songs of Bloody Harlan. They also want you should do a movie poster before you start, if you can. Again, it helps focus what you do. So I'm going to show you a good one first. And I like her, but I'm going to show you this one from one of my twins, Matt. Last weekend or 2 weekends ago, joined University of Kentucky. Both my twins are freshmen at Kentucky. They joined a 48-hour short film contest. On Friday, you get to draw out of a hat. You get the genre, which theirs was horror. You get a character that's got to be in it, a detective. You get a prop, which they got a dog. They got a line. I don't remember the line of the text, but something like
I'll be the judge of that.
I'll be the judge of that. And then you've got 24 or 48 hours to make a screenplay, but you also have to create a poster. And the title of their screenplay was The Staircase. And it's a little blurry because I took a wrong image to make this at Walgreens last minute, but you tell it's a staircase. And then the way they creatively did the title for it, I thought was really cool. But it is, you don't know that it's horror from this, but you can kind of guess that there's something strange going on. But this is for freshmen. And by the way, they won.
Yeah.
They joined just to get experience. Matt has never directed. Matt's never written a screenplay. Matt's never done any of that. Matt joined just to see what the process was like. So down the line, Matt's majoring in creative writing for film. So Matt did it just because, and they won. A group of freshmen beat the second place team was led by a PhD candidate. So good for them. Now this is the Songs of Bloody Harlan poster, and I love this poster. But there's actually a problem with this. And when I went to Hydra Publications, was given a film award at a film festival out in Las Vegas for best publisher of the year. And when I talked to a guy and I pitched this, he's a movie director, directed 25 movies. He goes, I like the concept. You got to change the title. Title doesn't work. Songs of Bloody Harlan is based on, this movie is based on a collection of poems written by Lee Pennington that was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize called Songs of Bloody Harlan. But when you read the title, what do you think of?
Musical.
You think of music, right? You don't think of poetry. You don't think of that kind of stuff. When people see this, even though it's appropriately named because of what it's based on, I would be willing to bet we end up changing the title. Because when people read this, they think music. And granted, in the screenplay, Lee, because Lee is also a folk singer, Lee does play a song at the beginning of the movie, but never does again through the rest of the film. So people are going to see this title and be misled. He said, if you're going to use that poster, use that title, you better have a darn good log line that goes along with it so people understand what it's about. But quite frankly, I think we're going to end up having to change the title. So I love the poster concept. This is the actual book that got the contract taken out on the slide. I mean, thematically, you get the mood, it's all that, but I think we got to change the title. But also have a movie done. The first thing last night, Matt's being involved in a 60-second film contest One of the first things Matt did was contact the people who did this poster and say, I need a poster. Here's the premise, do me a poster. And so before the screenplay was even finished, even though it's only 60 seconds, it's not that long, Matt already had a poster. So log line and a poster, so this helps keep you focused on what you need to do. Know your genre. You know, do you want to write a romance? Do you want to write a thriller? Do you want to write a mystery? Because the pace and the beats of all of them are a little different. Now you can mix them up. I don't like scary movies. I write scary books, but I don't like scary movies. I can count on the one hand the ones I've watched voluntarily. Having said that, one of my favorite scary movies is Predator, because the first half of the movie is a war movie. There's no supernatural or alien aspect in it at all. It's just a war movie. And then halfway through, the last half is a battle with an alien. And that switch, I thought that was really cool because it was really well done. They kind of hit it in the movie. I'm like, this is about an alien. I was watching with a friend, watching. Oh, that's cool. So you can blend genres, but you really got to have a reason for doing it. But know the genre that you're writing, and because each one has a different rhythm to it. So I'm currently writing a romantic dog comedy because they're not just scream romance. So, but that's one of the things that I'm doing now. But it's different than writing songs of Bloody Harlan. It's just the beat and the way they flow. If anybody here's written a romance novel, you know that in a romance novel, this really needs to happen by page 25. This really needs to happen by page 50. My mother, when I was writing a detective novel early on, my mom, God bless her, she has passed away. She read the first 7 chapters I've written, and she's like, all right, son, I'm gonna tell you something. I think the writing's really good. But in my detective novels, if somebody's not in bed with somebody else by chapter 7, I've already looked for somebody else to read. You don't have to have a lot of sex in your book. You got to have some. Because in thrillers, she expects, when she reads her thrillers, to be some, even sexual tension. There's got to be something. You give me nothing. I'm like, oh, you know, having this conversation with your mother. But she was right. So when I wrote The Hand of God, the sex doesn't happen in chapter 17. But I told my mom, there's a good reason. You got to wait. Hang in there, mom. But she expected, because in her books that she reads, in the movies, there's a rhythm to them, something she expects to see. If it's not there, James Bond movies, they're the same movie over and over, but you expect to see gadgets, tuxes, and girls, and great action sequences. But a Bond movie better have those 3 things in it, or you're going to leave going, where's Q? Where was the tux? Yeah. You know, where are the babes, right? Because that's what, you know, people who watch James Bond movies, that's what they expect. So, or watch a great Western. If it's a Western series, you expect to see certain things in a Western. So know your genre and make sure you're hitting the marks in that screenplay that you're writing. Page count. You got to know the proper page count. Generally in film on a screenplay, 1 page equals 1 minute of dialogue. And I'm also going to this game from us being brand new. You know, the new John Wick movie. I love the John Wick movies. They're really entertaining. The new movie is 2 hours and 49 minutes long. So that's basically 149 pages. They can get away with that because they've had 4 successful movies or 3 successful movies before this. But generally, you want to keep your screenplay at 120 pages or less if it's a movie. And you want to keep it to 90 or less if it's a TV screenplay, depending on whether it's a BBC mystery that runs 90 minutes, right? So you need to keep that. You need to keep that in mind when you're writing on the page count part. If you come up with me and say, I get this great movie, how many pages? Well, it's 160 pages. No, never going to happen. But also there's cost of money because every page costs money. And I can tell you by the way, if anybody has money you want to invest in the movie, please let me know. We're actually accepting. But it's one of those cases where, everybody's budget conscious, you know, because things are expensive these days to make stuff. And when you write your screenplay, if you're writing a comedy, target 90 pages, hour and a half. If you're writing action or a drama, you can get up to 120. The Song of Bloody Harlan is 122 or 126, but we plan on cutting 10 to 15 pages, depending on the budget. If the budget's here, we're going to cut this scene or 2 out. If the budget's down here, we're going to cut these other scenes out. So when we wrote Songs of Bloody Harlan, we wrote it hoping we would get everything, but knowing we're going to cut at least 10 pages. So by the time it's done, it'll probably be 115, 119 pages by the time it's all said and done. If we get the full budget, if we don't get the full budget, it'll be 110 maybe. Because we'll probably cut out at least 10 to 15 pages out of it for sure. Whereas we'd like to just cut a couple. So yeah, so keep your page count in mind. And then you also have to keep your budget in mind. Because if you write a screenplay that has car chases and explosions and the moon is crashing into the earth and a band of aliens are fighting 1,000 Marines, who's going to pay for that? You know, CGI's got better. CGI is not cheap. But if you write a really good drama, or matter of fact, one of the reasons I was talking to Jamezz, he says, did you get your dog comedy finished yet? Which I haven't. See if you get a picture of somebody else, because it's cheap to make. When I was at this thing in Las Vegas, the John Margalis, can't remember his name, but he's the guy who's made 25 independent movies. But he was doing, if you want to pitch a screenplay in Hollywood, here's what sells: put a dog in it. They're cheap. People love them. On the streaming services, they get watched over and over and over and over and over again. When I was a kid, everybody remembers Benji and Old Yeller. I mean, people my age still know who Old Yeller is. And in the modern world, it's Air Bud or Beethoven, or, you know, picking any one of a number of dog movies. There's like 1 million Air Bud movies because young kids like them. He goes, I can make a dog movie for about 80,000 and then resell it for 5 or 6 times that. They're cheap, they're easy to make, you know. So keep budget in mind when you're writing your screenplay. If you want it picked up, now once you get some success, you know, when you're Aaron Sorkin, you can pretty much do what you want, but even he's going to be on budget constraints. But the whole point is once you get successful and get a few movies made, you can start to branch a little further. But to make your initial screenplays, you know, sellable, don't cost a lot of money. Good family drama, good romance, a Christmas movie. You know, how many Lifetime, how many do they run, right? But those are the reason why Lifetime does that. They're incredibly cheap to make. They, you know, there's almost no special effects on them. So they can make those movies for 150,000, 250,000, depending on the acting. And you notice almost all the actors are either people who were famous 30 years ago or people you've never heard of, because the actors don't cost any money. So they can make them for $250,000 and make millions by millions of dollars on it. So keep budget in mind when you're writing your screenplay. And the other thing is on screen descriptions. We're going to transition to that. And again, always feel free to interrupt me. Scenes should look like this if you can see it. This is almost all dialogue. You do not want to see large block. This is the descriptive part here. You don't want your description to be all the way down to here, right? Keep it short, because more importantly, the director and other people are going to decide how that scene is really going to look. But like car chase, interior, car, morning, you know, and then go to dialogue. You know, car chase scene. If it's going to be at somebody's house, when you initially set it up, you know, exterior bank, it's what everybody would think is a bank. You know, just something just short to get the description to the director. Now, if you're directing your screenplay, if you're going to write it to direct it, you can put a lot more scene descriptions and that kind of stuff. But like putting in your screenplay, fade to black, don't ever do it. Don't give directing tips in your screenplay. That's for the director to do. You want your screenplay to be brief, short descriptions and then lots of dialogue. And even dialogue, if you notice, most of these blocks are really short. Unless somebody's giving a speech. Now, if you're writing there you go. If you're writing a speech about Martin Luther King or a movie about Martin Luther King, and you're going to do his "I Have a Dream" speech, now that's going to be longer because, you know, everybody's going to expect that speech to be in there. So you're going to have a character talking for, you know, 5 minutes on something like that. But in most cases, you want interaction, you want movement, you want the camera to be going back and forth to different people because people are used to seeing movement. If you've got one person droning on for a full page, no, don't do that. So keep your descriptions short and keep your dialogue blocks broken up.
Unless you're Aaron Sorkin.
Unless you're Aaron Sorkin. Again, once you become famous, you can do a lot more stuff that us average Joes and Janes just can't do. But generally speaking, you want your dialogue again to be short. Because you want to beat, right? Movie's getting beat. And that's what that does. So also your scene should have a beginning, middle, and an end. Just like a book does, just like your full screenplay, because your screenplay is going to have 3 acts in it. You're going to have the setup, you're gonna have the conflict and then the resolution. Each scene should try to do the same thing. When you get in, like there's a scene early in Songs of Bloody Harlan, that Lee is doing a song, and I'm not gonna spoil it for people, but then while he's singing, it flashes to another thing that's happening that's really bad. Back a little bit to Lee's singing, and then finally going into some conversation in the middle, the whole time while Lee's song is playing through the background, even to the other scene, and then it resolves with what the bad guys are doing, and then back to Lee. So it has a beginning, it introduces Lee, introduces the bad guys. There's a middle where you get some information about who the people involved are on the where Lee is at, the resolution with the bad guys, the resolutions with Lee. So that scene has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's not very long. It's only like a page, page and a half, but it has a beginning, middle, and end. And when you write your novels, you know, and by the way, Derby, Rotten Scoundrels, is there a better name? I think not. As a Louisvillian who lives near, I think it's a great name. So, so keep that. Your scenes have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We talked about keeping your budget, and this is what I wrote in the thing. If every scene has a huge car chase filled with lots of explosions, a ton of guns being used while building crumbles to the ground, and the moon is crashing into the earth, how likely is the movie to be made? Budget matters. And then a screenplay is a series of beats, and that's one of the things that's really great about Save the Cat. He goes into great detail about what each beat. I'm going to read a couple of them. I think there's 15 total beats. Yeah, there's 15. But like the first one, an opening image or something, and then a theme, but like pages 1 to 10 is the setup, right? The second beat is the catalyst, about page 12. You want to see what's kind of like in the hand of God, Satan shows up. And in the novel, it starts out at 6 p.m. when the devil walks into my office and had a seat. On the movie, the catalyst, you have the first scene with the bounty hunter catching the bad guy and then letting him go. And then about page 10, page 12, the devil walks into his office. And here comes the catalyst moving the movie in a totally different direction. Is scenes 12 to 25 or debate, and I'm not going to list all 15 because I really think you should buy the book and give him the money for doing so. Most of us are writers. We want to give him the props. But learning the beats, and that's the other thing about going back to final draft, it actually has a beat board. So before you start, you can actually design your beats in final draft and go, all right, I'm on page 12, what should I be doing? And it has like a little postcard that shows you I need to be doing this, right? So having the beat in the pace of a movie, it's like Liliana Hart, we're talking about romance novels, and she was giving a talk about writing romance novels. People, by page 20, you better be doing this, page 50, you better be doing this, page 67, and then they better be a happy ending at the back. There was some type of happier resolution. But she goes, every novel I write at these pages, Mark, each of these things happen. She makes 6 figures a month writing independent romance novels. She goes, my people love a formula. I stick to the formula. I rewrite them, different characters, different scenarios, but the beats of the novel are all the same. And I make sure I hit each of it. Is no different from writing a screenplay. You want to make sure you hit your beats when you do that. And then you look back over here. You have to have a very thick to write a screenplay. When I got hired to write the Hand of God screenplay, the producer said, look, you're probably gonna, and I didn't know this, you're probably gonna rewrite the screenplay 25, 30 times. By the time it's all done, because there'll be budget considerations. It'll be the director wants something, the actor wants something. We'll get into filming a scene and realize we just can't afford it. You know, we got to ditch the scene, give me something else. He goes, you're gonna write this screenplay, you're gonna get sick of it. You're gonna rewrite it so often. That's the industry norm. Don't be offended when you get asked to. Now, I have a very thick skin. I was a mailman for 60 years before I became a writer. And believe me, mailmen almost never hear, hey, good job, guy. He was like, where's my check? Right? So I only talk to people when things go bad. And when I first started, they made got little yellow cards. I would get 5 complaints a day because I was brand new. And it got to the point where I hated to come back to the office. I would look around the corner of my case, more yellow cards. And then by the time I was done, I'd done it so long, well, I never got a yellow card because I'd learned the process. But I learned to have a thick skin as a mailman. And as a writer, I tell my authors, if you write really good edgy fiction, you're going to get people to hate your work. You're going to get a 1-star review. They're going to be people who just don't like it. I got my first 1-star review and went out and we went out to dinner and celebrated. Because it makes the other ones look good. So when someone reads your screenplay and the producer goes, dude, I have no idea what you're doing here. Why did you write this scene? Well, explain it. Well, you got to change that. Well, change it because you want to get paid, right? Don't be territorial. Because particularly if you're brand new, it's like when I had the meeting with Keith David, we had a bunch meeting about the Hand of God screenplay. And I asked him about a couple of the things in the screenplay. One, there was a joke, and in my novel, I thought it was pretty funny, but there's a Caucasian character and an African American character, and they have some banter going back and forth. And I asked him about this one. I said, does this offend you as a man of color? He goes, well, it doesn't offend me. I just think it's funny. Yeah, I met you. You're a pretty funny guy. I just don't think the line's funny. I think you can do better. All right. So, and I asked him about a couple other things, not about that, but just scenes in general. And one of the things that when we got done, he goes, you took the criticism pretty well, based on it. Well, you've made how many movies? You've read how many screenplays? This is my first. You know what you're doing and I don't, and I want to get paid. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this movie made so I get paid. And I don't want to sound like I'm a writing mercenary, but I'm a writing mercenary. I mean, I want to do this for a living. I want to earn, and you can make it, once you get into writing screenplays, it's a really nice payday once you make the connections writing screenplays. Writers Guild of America, I highly recommend you join and write your screenplay, because that way you're guaranteed a minimum amount of payment. It's already set on what you're going to make. But more importantly, if you don't go to the WGA and you have a screenplay made, getting another screenplay made by a union group, it's going to be really hard to do. There you go. What movies have you done? Was that a union movie? And whether you love unions or you don't, in Hollywood, if you're not a member of the union and you want to get something made, you're either always going to be independent route and self-fund your movies, but if you want to get involved with people who do bigger things, you're going to be union. And you don't want to be on the wrong side of that door when it's closed. So, but having said that, what I will get paid for Songs of Bloody Harlan when it gets financed is more than any year I made as a novelist. You know, and more than I made for any launch of any novel. So in other words, I like screenplays, but it's harder to get a screen. Now, anybody can publish a novel. You've got an Amazon account. I think it's better if you go with a publisher, but anybody can self-publish. And a lot of people do it successfully. But when you're writing a screenplay, you can't self-publish most people's screenplay. You got to find somebody with money to make it. So when you get it, just try to make sure that you're with the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, for people who don't know the initials. Writers Guild of America, make sure your screenplay, and you can copyright it with it as well. Even before you sell it, write it and copyright it with the WGA. So, but have that thick skin, because there are going to be people who are going to tell you things in your screenplay they just don't like. Well, okay, well, what would you like me to do different? How can I rewrite this to make you happy? Because you don't want them to bring somebody else in to fix your screenplay, because then the money gets split. Again, remember, I'm a writing mercenary. I want to keep all that money for me because I've earned it. So I wrote it, right? And then table reads, all those screenplays that I passed out. Some people, as you can see, we have oh, I'm gonna tell you something else. See what we did here? Or this is binded. Don't do that. They don't like binding. When you go to a table read, they want it to be loosely bound and in a box, and then they turn page by page. I prefer this. So when I did my personal table read, I did this to make it easier, because having 8 people around a table with each one having 120 pages of loose leaf and them all flipping it to do stuff, in my living room, that wasn't going to work. But they will tell you, do not bind your screenplay when you submit it to somebody in person. Have it in a box, all loosely there so they can read it. But do table reads. When we did a table read for Songs of Bloody Harlan, and we did one for the Hand of God too, but more for the Songs of Bloody Harlan. One of my friends, Bob Sayback was Bob, was reading it, and he would read the lines and get what was supposed to be there, but his brain would change it slightly, because his dialogue was more natural than what I had written. And we would do the table read, and he would say something, hang on just 1 second. Just what are you doing? Don't worry about what I'm doing. Just what you did was great, but I was making notes, change this line to this. And Bob, more than anybody else, although some other people did the same thing, Bob, I picked up things that table read, and you don't want to be involved in your own table read. Have other people do it while you're listening. I found flaws in my screenplay by listening to the table read. And so it became more conversational. The dialogue was more natural, and I probably made a dozen changes based on that table read. And I would hear somebody go, they read it right. I go, in my head, that didn't sound as good as when I wrote it. I don't like that as much. So find some friends and do a table read. For Song of Bloody Harlan, we had a table read at Lee Pennington's house. We brought in some professional actors. We had my twins involved, and they did a table read. And again, I found a few things I wanted to fix. But hearing the table read and hearing actors read it really helps you as a screenwriter. Yeah, I nailed that. I got that scene right. That's what I want. Or, maybe not, right? That doesn't sound quite as right. So do table reads for your screenplays before you submit it to anyone. This is before you submit it to a professional, before you have somebody look at it. When you're writing a novel, and I tell people all the time, when you're writing a novel, have your book professionally edited before you send it to a publisher. Because everybody now thinks that it's a publisher's job to have your book edited, and we will. But if I got 5 choices and 4 have not been edited and 1 that has, they're all equal. I'm thinking one's been edited because again, we're lazy. We want to do less work and save more money, but it's not going to pay somebody to edit it. So, have that table read so you at least had some kind of edit before you send it to somebody and it all sounds right to you. It sounds right to them. We did copies where this person just highlighted. I've got other versions of the table read where people were making notes in the screenplay about other parts, not their part. Hey, I heard this didn't sound right. Or hey, did you ever think about doing this? Because we encourage people to give me suggestions. And it's highly important to have a table read. So I think that kind of gets over most of the things on getting prepared to write a screenplay. Do we have any direct questions? Go ahead.
Is it easier for you to work from your novel, or have you come up with just new ideas? Is it easier to do a new idea?
If you have a novel, it's much easier to write from a novel. My novels are dialogue heavy. The dark humor, fast paced, lots of humor. And so we were able to, that's one of the reasons why they wanted me to write the Handicap screenplays they presented to Keith David, is that I could pull stuff from the book. Now I'm writing other stuff. Songs of Bloody Harlan was from a book of poetry, but it had not been written. So I mentioned before it started, I spent several hours interviewing Lee Pennington, and while I wrote the novel, wrote the screenplay, I had the interview playing on headphones while I'm writing. I have the great ability to listen to something, but not listen to something. It's mood. And the reason why I was listening to Lee's interviews is dialogue. How did Lee talk? Any of you who know Lee Pennington know he's got his way of talking, right? And I wanted the character in the movie to sound as much like Lee as humanly possible. And I took some quotes direct from the interview. It was, I think one of the quotes said both, in a class he taught was, it said Archimedes who moved the world with a pole. Was it Archimedes? It said Archimedes moved the world with a pole and a firm stance. He goes, this class is your pole, where you're at is your firm standing, and together we're going to move the world with your poetry. So, people are going to get good poetry should make people react. Well, they want to kill him. So I guess you said that was a good, well, not a good thing for him. But there's one, when I wrote that, it was just based on the story Lee told at a Christmas party. Lee was telling the story. I said, Lee, you got to let me write a screenplay about that. I was looking for something to write. And he goes, hey, go for it. And then the very next month, a group contacted and said they'd seen a documentary on Lee. We want to make a movie of your life. And they agreed. Now we're going to write a screenplay. And Lee goes, well, I know I got it. So I sent him the Hand of God screenplay. And then I had a couple of phone interviews. And then they hired me to write the screenplay. And again, it's won a major award. And now people want to make it. So, but no, I think it's easier from a novel. And when you write your novels, for the mystery writers in here, when you write your novel, keep your screenplay in mind. Because a lot of places now, a lot of publishers will go, have you written a screenplay to go with it? Because they're different. Because again, you're gonna have to maybe meld some characters together. There's gonna be subplots you got to cut out. Because again, you only have 90 to 120 pages. You're not going to get your whole novel in there. You're just not. So, but when you're writing your novel, keep in mind a screenplay. And that's the great thing. Hydra Publications was owned by somebody else when I first got signed, but actually Other World Publications, run by Lynn Titcher, is a fabulous lady. I now publish her books. When they hired me, they said, we want to try to get this made into a movie. So when you write your novel, keep a movie in mind. So not as much description, lots of action, lots of dialogue. So when you write your mystery novel, keep a screenplay in mind when you're writing your novel or your romance novel, whatever. And then try to write a screenplay to go with it. You say to the publisher, I have a book and ta-da, I've got a screenplay that you can market to other people. Because publishers love to hear the fact that they might make some money somewhere else. Now, and my contracts for my writers, there are no other media percentages. I do a separate contract if I can get somebody a media deal. So, and that's also as a screenwriter and as a novelist, a writer. Watch your contracts for what they have in there. And I don't blame the person who had originally owned them, but in the original contracts for Hydra got 60% of whatever you made from a movie or TV. And I'm like, at first I'm like, cool, I get a movie or TV deal. But as I've gone along and realizing that's a pretty hefty percentage for the publisher. So not only did I reduce the percentage, I took it out of the contract. Because I started as a writer. So I want to be treated like a writer wants to be treated by publishing house. But when you sign contracts, have a professional look over a screenplay contract or a novel contract. When you're doing, go ahead.
There's also the idea that if your publisher has some of your movie rights, they could mess you over. Maybe they've got two people competing, two studios or two producers competing for that screenplay. And the one studio or whatever says to your publisher, hey, if you give it to me, I'll give you 60% and we'll screw the writer over and give him just 30% or something. Whereas so it's like, oh, okay, well, your publisher just screwed you because they got a better deal, not because you got a better deal. So it's a conflict of interest. The publisher is acting as your agent, and no.
So when you get off of this contract, just don't be really excited and sign it. Have somebody look at it.
Yeah,
that's what you want to do. Other questions?
Do you need an agent?
In most cases, yes. You're going to need, or you can go to film festivals and find people to talk to. But in almost every case, you're going to need an agent. I'm lucky, like romantic dog comedy. The people who assigned me to 2 contracts for my novels, they read the head of God's screenplay because they're going to make a movie or a TV series out of it. And then I sent them the songs of Bloody Harlan screenplay, the head of the studio, to look over. And he made a couple of suggestions. He made a suggestion on the poster. And then I called him wrote him about the dog comedy because this guy in Las Vegas said, hey, if you'll write the screenplay, send it to me. I'll make that movie. And I asked the head of the studio, I said, what do you think? He goes, well, first of all, why are you sending your screenplays to anybody else? Because you don't understand, I don't look at screenplays unless they come from an agent. Because that weeds out the riffraff. You get to send me anything in an email that you write because we like your writing. You get to skip the agent part. You get to send it right to me. But if he hadn't already seen my books, I'd had to have an agent to get to this guy. So in most cases, you're gonna be pitching your stuff to agents. That's why you need to have a good log line, have a screenplay that's tight, have it be in the right format, have it be the right page count, and I've had people look at it. You do your table read. When you hand it over, you want him to look at the screenplay or she look at the screenplay and go, whoa, this just happened with Bloody Harlan. We're trying to get the Louisville Film Commission involved. And the guy that's on the commission, we send the screenplay and he goes, I'm gonna tell you something. He goes, my calendar was already full for 2023. I'm already booked. I'm changing my schedule to help you all make this movie. He goes, I've read hundreds of screenplays, and this is one of the best screenplays I've ever read. He goes, this movie has to be made. It has to be made in Louisville. It's got to be made by us. And this was the guy who read the screenplay but we've had a lot of feedback on the screenplay. So it's not like I wrote the virgin screenplay and handed it over and said, here. But because of all the preparation we did beforehand, when a professional like him finally got to read it, it was in sellable shape. And he's changing his calendar around to help us get the funding. Matter of fact, we had decided to lower the budget for it. First time director, first time screenwriter. And we were lowering the budget. Why did you lower the budget? So, well, because first time, we're putting the budget back. Because we're going to get this to fund it. We're going to get this amount of money. Because, it's just negative the project. But, it's nice that they say that, but it wasn't like, again, I wrote it overnight and handed it to them. This had months and years of refining and let's change the scene, let's do that scene. And by the time we got to somebody could make a difference, it was ready. and you want your screenplay to be ready. So, other questions?
Can you talk a little about networking to find the right people to, because I know you did networking a lot.
Film festivals are big, going to Imaginarium. Imaginarium always has film people. It's one of the region's largest writers conference. They cover novel writing, screenwriting, songwriting, just about everything. But they always have movie producers, screenwriters, people in the business there that you can talk to, network with, and make contacts with. For those of us who don't have an agent, look to see the people in the genre that you like and find movies that you like and see who their agents are. Going back to novel writing, Jim Butcher, he was a writing mentor for my Victor McCain novels. He just doesn't know if we've ever met, but his style of writing I just love. He went to a convention of literary agents, knew the agent he wanted because she represented people that wrote books like him, saw her getting ready to sit down for dinner, sit down next to her, and said, "Hi, I'm your next greatest writer. And I've got my proposal here. I'd love you to look at it because he had researched her, because you represent Joe, Jane, Jenny, Johnny Schmo, and you wrote these books. My Dresden Files books are right up your alley, and I'd love you to take a look at it." And she, now generally sitting down next to somebody at dinner, it's kind of rude, but he didn't know how else to get published. And she found, well, let me see it. He's gone on to be an international writer. So he went to a convention of literary agents. We're doing a thing for the Louisville Literary Arts. I'm on the board of Louisville Literary Arts for novelists. There's a pitch session. I don't know if it closed today. Check the Louisville Literary Arts on Facebook or on their webpage. They're having a literary agent do a pitch session. It's $40. She'll give you 10 minutes. You pitch your books. She'll tell you whether she wants to represent you, that kind of stuff. And even though I own a publishing house and I'm successful, I'm pitching my detective series to her. Because one of the things I'm learning from people like Richard Knack, who we publish, Richard Knack is represented by the Big Five. He's represented by Hydra Publications, and he self-publishes. He likes to have a variety of outlets for his books. So if one thing isn't going well, maybe the other one is. And I got to thinking, it doesn't hurt for me to pitch my new detective series to an agent to see what they can do for me. But that's the thing you're going to do. You're going to want to find agents, research them greatly, find out, again, the genre that you write. Do you know what type of screenplays you want to write?
I have some ideas. I'm not really
Okay.
serious about it at this point.
But that's what you want to do. But yeah, you almost always have to have an agent. Or, see, I'm one of those people, I'm a unicorn in the fact that I've never gotten a rejection letter because I've technically never sent one out. For my novels, I went to a pitch session for pitch to the publisher. And I pitched 2 novel ideas to 3 publishers, about 3 offered to publish it. And then with the screenplay, somebody asked me to write the screenplay. So, I got lucky that I'm the abnormal path, and I feel very blessed. I've been really lucky. I like to tell you that there's a lot of skill involved. There's a lot of luck involved too. Luck and networking, it won't make your thing. But also meeting people like me. When you're going down the line and you get a really good screenplay, I may have a production company in a year where I'm looking for screenplays to produce, right? So you now know somebody, a guy, right? So, hey, Tony, I got the screenplay. You think you can get somebody to look at it? I may go, well, we're really busy, no. Or what's your log line? Give me your pitch. Sounds cool. We'll take a look at it. That's how it works. You get a lot of people look at the Songs of Bloody Harlan screenplay has been looked at 20 people, 20 different organizations, and different levels. We could have already had it made, but the group wanted 50% of all the profits off the top before we split it with anybody else. We're like, no, not gonna do that. So, that kind of thing where somebody wants a huge profit or they want to make it for like next to nothing. And we don't want to do that either. So we're willing to wait for a good project. And now with some local people involved, I think the momentum to get this movie finally made is moving forward. So other questions? Are you able to take them from Zoom? Is there any Zoom people there that have a question?
I don't see anyone. Yes, we can.
So if you're a Zoom person and have a question, now's the time to type really fast.
Or you can make it
just
speak.
wave.
Or just wait.
Yeah, we'll open your audio.
Any other questions from our local group?
You were talking about Googling screenplays. Do you have any screenplay you'd recommend that you think is really well done?
Well, again, it depends on your genre. The one I thought was really good was The French Connection. course, they won the Academy Awards, that kind of makes sense. And actually for what I needed to write for the car chase scenes, I thought Baby Driver was really good. It's nothing but car chase scenes. But in general, like for writing romantic dog comedy, I actually went back and was reading When Harry Met Sally. You know, because of the dialogue, it's a little offbeat, it's a little off color. You know, that the famous scene in the diner, you know, and she does it, and I want what she's having. You know, that kick extra line by the other patron in the diner, the scene was good. That extra diner making that final scene, I want to have what she's having. That sold the scene, right? Because, and that's what you'll learn from reading a good screenplay, is that extra little something. When I started writing my detective novels that I'm writing, I like Robert B. Parker's Spencer novels. So my detective novel is an homage to Spencer and Robert B. Parker, designed kind of the same kind of format. And what I learned from going and rereading a lot of the Robert B. Parker books before I started writing my detective novel, in the middle of almost every scene that Spencer's in, something else is happening. He'll be having dinner with somebody, and out the window on the street, he's an ice cream vendor or whatever. He has these little details in the middle of something you need to know. One, it increases your word count. We all need to hit our word count. But more importantly, it's like motion in a screenplay, right? You want motion, you want that dialogue to be back and forth. You want your screenplay to be doing this, it's got to have a rhythm and beat to it. Well, his novels, for Spencer novels, they're almost all dialogue. But you have information, different scene, information, different scene, information. There's a flow to how Robert B. Parker wrote his novels. It had a beat to it that I'm like, and when I started reading what I had written for the detective novel, I went, huh, I don't do that. Maybe that's a good idea. So now in every major scene, I try to have some other color, some other, you know, there's a scene where my detective's interviewing the victim's brother at the Raven Irish pub. And while they're talking, there's a redhead reading the Wall Street Journal. And, you know, my character's giving her the smile. She just shakes her head, not paying attention. And then he quotes Shakespeare, my detective does, to the brother. And he's like, what? And the main guy goes, a rose by any other name? And he goes, it was weird, that kind of thing. But as the next part of the scene is, as the scene is ending, the woman with the Wall Street Journal walks by, drops her Wall Street Journal next to the detective and walks out. And the last part says, would be just as sweet. And it had her phone number. So, but there, I learned from Parker to add that little extra, here's an information, I need to drop some info on the reader, but let's give them something to break that up. And it's kind of the same thing with your novels or with your screenplay. Because again, beats are really important in a screenplay. You got to keep it moving. You know what people in the theater going, you got the candy? Did you bring the candy? I don't know what's going on. You know, you want people to be, we went to go see the Hand of God movie. And yeah, I grew up in a role-playing group a long time ago. And what was interesting was to watch one of the people who was with us. This is the seat, most people are in recliners. They were on the seats like this, watching it. Well, what better compliment can you have as a filmmaker that you literally have somebody on the edge of their seats clasping their hands worried about what's going to happen? That shows you that the people who are, and that's the good thing about the reviews I'm reading, is that the screenplay is really good for that movie. And in Matt's short story, I sent it to a couple of professionals I deal with, the guy who's going to direct Songs of Bloody Harlan. And what Jamezz said about Matt's short story is, that was a really good screenplay. Because what made that short story, dialogue was good. It was seamless. For a first-time screenwriter director to have, even as a short, he goes, that what made that short film was the screenplay. The screenplay was very well put together. It's only 3 or 4 pages, it's not very long, but got all the elements that needed to be in it and did it in a way that flowed really well. So, you know, keeping that rhythm and that beat in is all about the beat. And I grew up during disco, so we know about beat. We know about that. You know, I can shake a rug. Any other questions? There are no silly questions. If you don't ask me questions, I have to go shopping. So the twin in the back room says, "Yay, I really want to do that." Anything else? Yes, sir.
In dialogue, whether it's a stage play or screenplay, how much leeway do you give for accents or specialty accents that might, for instance, African American in a and a southern drawl.
Mhm.
I've been advised that, you need to give the actors their head to determine the amount of accent they have. I think in one particular case, in my stage play, the accent is very, very, very important. And I've written it out for an African American. What do you advise?
Well, again, I think we had a long discussion about this on Songs of Bloody Harlan. It's set in Hazard. I mean, in Harlan County. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Harlan County, but like I had to ask for directions. I was trying to find Lee's original house, right? And the woman goes, I don't know where that street is, but that guy does. He's lived here forever. Could you talk to him? I said, sure. And he went, and I'm not making this up. This is the way he said, and I went, okay. And I started to walk out. The woman goes, you understood that? I went, well, I grew up in the country. So I think he said, go to the stop sign, turn right, go around the curve, and on the left, take the first left, go up the hill, and it's the second house on the right. The directions were perfect. But in Songs of Bloody Harlan, we're worried about the dialect getting in the way of the general, someone in California watching the movie or somebody in Nebraska watching the movie. So we try to use names and places more to get the dialect across. Like the main character, the poetry gang, there's Lee, his wife Joy, Arlen Andrews, I named the character. For those of you who know Arlen, I named the character Arlen Andrews. And then there's the four poetry gang. It's Kitely, Nancy, Fred, and Kitely is the main character. And then there's the fourth one. It's not Carl, but it's something like that. So we try to use names to do that. I think on a stage play, you can get away with it a little bit more. Because generally you're going to show that stage play, it could be national, but you're going to, typically it's going to be shown in the South here in Kentucky and the Southern region. I think you can get away with it a little bit more than you can in a movie. But we just wanted the people to understand the language really well. I think as long as it's done purposely and it has a point for it, I think it's a good idea. But in our case, we chose to use names and places as opposed to dialect. That doesn't mean they won't have a little bit more of a country accent when they actually act it. Somebody like I was in just north of Harlan, and I'd handed something to somebody who handed it to somebody else. And by using word use, she goes, you can't have it. He reached it to me. And I went, oh, reached it to me. But she said reached it, but reached it. So you can use a little different. I would have used reached it, but I could use reached it in dialogue and have word use show that difference in dialect as opposed to the actual accent stuff. Well, hey man, how you doing? That's how my relatives talk. I'm sorry, relatives, you watching this, a lot of y'all talk like this. You do, because I grew up with you. I know. But so we use word use and name and place to get that across. I think in a movie you got to do that. I think in a screenplay, depending on where you're going to show it, I think it'd be a little different.
Yeah, the other thing is that Southern dialects, I mean, there are a million Southern dialects.
Oh yeah, no
I
doubt.
have relatives in North Carolina and Alabama.
No doubt.
Oh,
Well, even in Kentucky, I grew up with a rural accent. You go one county, I grew up in Oldham County. For those of you who don't know, Oldham County is right next to Louisville. You go to the next county over, which is Henry, and a lot of my relatives had a hick accent. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. And God love them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. But my choir teacher in high school, Mr. Bailey, we had the #1 choir in the state of Kentucky. But the reason why we were so good, and particularly vowel usage, he would tell us it ain't hallelujah, it's hallelujah. So we learned to pronounce our vowels for the longest time. I didn't sound like I was from Kentucky because I pronounced all my vowels correctly. Well, now that I'm older, I'm backsliding a little bit. I catch myself there and say, still? I mean, like, are you still doing that? Are you still? Am I robbing somebody? And that dialect crept back in. So, but I think in a movie, a lot less. I think in a stage play, if it's regional, I would have no problem with a little bit more accent there because you're doing it for a specific audience. It's going to understand the accent. If you think that people are going to understand the accent you're giving them, you can get away with it. I was afraid that if we use real, mountain dialect accents, a lot of people have no clue what we're saying.
I was thinking along the lines of, if you had dialogue from descendants from slaves
Right?
who would say, "Shalom." Would you reflect that in your dialogue?
If they use it, because there's a lot of people, yeah, but that's what I'm talking about, word usage. I would use, well, he reached it to me. Maybe as a thing, saying he gave it to me. I would show the difference that I would say he reached it to me. Because people can understand reached and they know what the character's saying, but as opposed to saying wretched it to me, which is how they really said it. If I had them pronounce it as wretched it, people in the movie theater be going, what? And it took me a second to figure out what she was saying. So word usage, but see, you're using word usage there as opposed to actual more than accent. That's more word usage. So, I mean, I would think that would be all right. But again, I think that would be fine to do because again, on a stage play, particularly when it's regional, I would understand exactly what they're saying, you know, because growing up in the South and growing up in a mixed race neighborhood with elderly people. I remember when I was a kid, one of my favorite people to talk to was almost 98 years old at the time. So he was born in, say this would have been early 70s. So he was born sometime in the 1870s and his dialect was different than what, you know, other people, African American people, the people I hung out with, the way they talk. And I used to love to hear the way, Papa talked because it was just different. And he taught me how to whistle too, just so you know. He was blind and I was down the street and goes, Acree. And he had a really good ear for dialect. He goes, is that you? Yes, sir. He goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm whistling. He goes, no, I ain't no whistling. Come here. And he spent the morning teaching me how to whistle. So now I can whistle because of Papa. So. But yeah, I think that we chose to not use as much accent and use more word usage and names. Abner is the name of the preacher. When you're Abner, you think country. You don't think New York City, Manhattan when you're Abner. You know, so we try to use country names. I picked from my family tree. Almost every character in my screenplay is named after somebody I'm related to because they're country people. And I wanted country names. That's a good question. Other people?
I just have just a comment. I heard just recently, if you're interested in writing romances, that Hallmark's doing most of their scripts in-house.
Yeah.
I think that Lifetime is too.
They are. But that's where you get an agent that gets you to in-house. That's where with them, you're gonna need an agent. I mean, you're gonna have somebody pitch it to Lifetime that already does work with Lifetime and Hallmark. But I guarantee you, if you can write a really good Christmas screenplay and you get to one of those agents, your chances go way up of getting it made. So this is not, if you're going to be a writer, and you already know this because you're members of a group here, being a writer is not easy. People think you just sit down and write a book and the money flows in. It doesn't happen that way. Well, those guys here, it does not happen. The 50 Shades of Grey are rare, right? To Kill a Mockingbird, rare. Most of us, I've been at this now for 10 years. As of this year, my first novel came out 2 years ago, January. And I had a 5-year business plan to be successful. And now we're into year 10. And I'm doing things I never thought I'd do. But it's a job. You got to work at it. And that means you can't just sit at home and push it out into the ether and things going to happen. You got to find agents. You got to do book signings. You got, from a novel standpoint, you got to do book signings. You got to do podcasts. You got to do blog interviews. You got to do Facebook posts. You got to do social marketing. You know, it's a job. It ain't easy. But you know what? They'll put me in a box doing this. One of the things I love about Robert B. Parker, he died over his keyboard. His personal assistant went to get him lunch. He came back and found him literally dead over his keyboard. That's how I want to go out. So, you know, when I go to these career fairs for the Oldham High School system, I do a lot of those. You got lawyers and, you know, and architects and bankers and this and that. One of my buddies is a deputy sheriff. He had the table across from mine, and I've known him since we were kids. He goes, I kept trying to come over to talk to you, but there was only 6 or 7 people at your table. Everybody wants to be a writer because one, and it's true, everybody can do it. You may not do it well, but everybody can do it. But it's hard because when I got hired to write a novel, I was a short story guy. And I had to go from writing 3,000 word short stories to a 75,000 word novel. And I thought, what the hell have I signed up for? I don't know how to do this. But I had a good writing mentor from Otherworld. They gave me the tips I need to be a good novelist and how to get a novel done. And now it's easy because I've learned the tricks to do it. And if you'll take the things we discussed about here, read Save the Cat, read some screenplays before you start, do your log line, maybe get a poster and get your mindset when you start to stay focused and then hit the, do the technical work, hitting the beats and the other stuff. You got a chance of being successful. But preparation in this world, you just don't sit down and paint a Mona Lisa. Unless you're Leonardo. But how many Leonardos have we had over the last 600 years, right? Couple, Michelangelo, Picasso, if you like that stuff. I always thought I could do it. But see, that's the other great thing. I look at Picasso and go, I can do what he did. No, I cannot. So, but people look at a novel. Tony Acree wrote a novel. Well, I wrote a novel.
The reason Picasso did the Cubism, the reason he came, because he was a representational artist who got so disgusted with the art buying population because they wouldn't buy. So he and George Bloch sat down and figured out the weirdest, most awful stuff they could. And
there you go. Well, and again, that's why art is in the eye of the beholder. Same thing for screenplays.
yeah.
Every couple of days, I go out and look at one of the apps for the Apple TV box is trailers. You can go out and look at movie trailers. And I will go out and not just to see what's new out that I might want to go see. As a screenwriter, I want to see what's getting made. And the stuff I see getting made, I'm going, why is my movie not out yet? Right? But that's the other thing when you're watching movies, something else. Oh, I meant to read this at the Oldham County one. We were talking about how ChatGPT and those kind of things are going to be replacing screenwriters and novel writers. So I went out and asked. I just gonna do this real quick. Asked ChatGPT what do you need to do to prepare to be a good screenwriter? Right. Number one, learn the basics of screenwriting. Screenwriting is a unique form of writing, has its own set of rules and conventions. It's essential to learn the fundamentals, blah, 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 for the first one. But then it actually really did give, number two, read screenplays. Have you heard that before today? I said it before they did, just so you know. Number three is watch movies, watch with an eye. I can't watch a movie now and not think of it as a screenwriter. We're watching The Night Agent. I don't know if anybody's watched it on Netflix. But there are some plot flaws in it that drive me nuts. I love that. I love it. I think it's really great. For those of you watching, there's a scene where two bad guys have gotten the codes to places for rent. Nobody's in it. And because she's got the security code, she goes in, she goes, I even know the code, puts the code in. Well, they're golden for a couple of days, right? No, my phone beeps me when somebody turns off my alarm. When my alarm goes on or goes off, I get a notification on my phone that says my alarm is on or off. And this house is big enough and beautiful enough and worth enough. I guarantee whoever had that security system, they got a text and an email saying, hey, your alarm just went off. So in the modern world, no. And I'm thinking, well, the cops are gonna be there shortly, right? Because they're doing this. No, it didn't happen. But I do like, but you'll watch things like tonight and you'll see that. The other thing I don't like, any Star Wars fans here? The worst shooters in the history of the world. They're supposed to be cloned after the best shooters in the history of the world. They can't shoot a laser down a straight hallway. It always hits the wall. It's like, I'm never writing that. So when I wrote The Hand That Got Screenplay, I added people for the bad guys to kill. Because the bad guys should be a good shot. They're professionals. They should be able to hit people. So my own people get wounded, other people get killed. So I added characters specifically knowing I was going to bump them off. If you're watching this and you're writing a screenplay, do not have bad guys with machine guns, the good guys with a pistol, and the machine guns can't hit anything, and the pistol hits about 100 yards out. Don't do that. Please don't do that. But, that drives me nuts when I watch an action film, and the guy with the handgun, and the guy with the machine gun is following the bullets just behind them as they're running, right? You just don't do this. Really? Really? Yeah. So things like that drive me nuts. But I really like The Night Agent, but here I am watching it as a screenwriter and picking it apart. It doesn't make sense. Then they get a code. And my wife's like, shut up. Turn the screenwriting brain off for a minute and just watch it and enjoy it. So, but it also goes back to budget. Anybody here seen the first Deadpool movie? They actually make fun of it in the movie because they only gave Ryan Reynolds a budget about this big. So he only has CGI for, I think it was 5 bullets, maybe 6. And he goes, well, there's one of them. And they make fun of the fact that he can only fire, he had to kill multiple people with one bullet, because they're only giving me 5. So, but that's where he worked. Now, they make fun of it during the actual movie, but the reason why they did it, hey, we'll give you 5 CGI bullets, make them count, and budget. And this is a Marvel movie. Of course, that time it was made by Fox. And I don't think it was a Marvel, I think it was actually done by Fox. But budget matters even for big budget movies. At some point you go, look, you can't have that. You just can't.
There's have you watched the movie that made us, the movies that made us? That's very informative. It's all about how certain movies are made, like Dirty Dancing and
I have seen some of those.
movies that made us.
Right.
That's number one. And the other thing is that I for some reason, I've become addicted to some certain movies, and I watch them 100 times.
Oh, yeah.
Well, at the end of it, I'm not watching the movie. The first time you get to watch the show, then after that, you start noticing the dialogue, you start noticing a tweak in the face, it's just, you get to see all the little tiny details.
The favorite movie for that I've ever remember is Dead Again by Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson. The movie opens with a woman that has amnesia that shows up at a local church home kind of place. And the priest asks Kenneth Branagh, the private detective character, for me, Mikey, whatever his name is, can you find out who she is? Because, you used to be here and you were one of my kids. I need you to help this woman. And it's told in flashback and in present time. And it's the way it's done, it's almost done like it's a Hitchcockian type of thriller. And every time you watch it, you pick up a different clue. And if you ever watch it, it's available on any of these streaming platforms. Pay attention to people's last names. I'm gonna give you that hint. Pay attention to people's last names. Because when I was watching it for like the 20th time, I'm like, oh, they gave me a clue. Then it was like, what else did I miss? And then you're watching it, and every time you pick up a new clue in it, but it's really well done. And it's where, if I had to rate my 10 favorite movies, it would be in there because of that. Because there's something to learn almost every time you watch it that you miss. Even something as simple as Monsters, Inc. When my twins were kids and I watched it, and there's a scene, and we watched that movie. If I say 100 times, I mean 100 times. And about the 30th time in, one of the monsters is walking down a sidewalk, falls through a grate, and goes, "Oh, great." I didn't catch it until like the 30th thing. I went, "Oh, that's pretty good." But it took 30 viewings for me to catch the fact that he says, "Oh, great," after falling through a grate, right? So those little Easter eggs put in for those people who are clever enough to catch it on the first or second time. Some of us have to take a few more than that. So, other questions?
The other thing is about the names. I've used the book that Lynn is reading for me now is the last name of one of the characters is Malpas, and that is in French as wrong step. And so a lot of times I'll use the foreign language or
Right.
different words on the last name to indicate the bad guy.
Well, think about book, novels, and movies the same. You got Gone Girl, right? Movie, the title, same thing. And it gives you a good description. There's a girl who's gone. What happened? Shawshank Redemption. When Shawshank is a prison, right?
Yeah.
The Green Mile. I mean, some of and then you have movies where you have no clue. And quite frankly, again, I love the title songs of Bloody Harlan. But as a movie title, again, we're probably going to change it. It's a great poster. I love the name, but it doesn't sell the book. It doesn't sell the screenplay, the movie, the way it needs to. So
there's a TV show called Firefly. They did a movie version. The movie version was titled Serenity. What's the name of the spaceship? But that doesn't tell you anything about the movie. It doesn't fit the mood of the movie. It doesn't tell you it's a science fiction movie. It doesn't tell you it's action. So it's like
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Right. Movie poster. When we saw it, we almost out of time. I see you look at the clock. I took my watch off.
No, it's 12:25.
Okay. Raiders of the Lost Ark. I had not, and this shows you how the right poster works. I had not heard anything about it.
Yeah.
I hadn't read any interviews of it. We went to go see a different movie. It was sold out. And they had this really cool poster, Harrison Ford and the whip and Raiders of the Lost Ark. And we're like, well, that looks kind of cool. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Raiders, you know, action, and you get the whip, and it's like, well, let's go see that. Oh my goodness, how great that movie was. But that was the perfect example of selling me to buy a ticket based on just a poster. Right title, great poster. I don't remember what the log line was on the bottom of it, but wherever it was, we're like, oh, we got to see this. And there was 20 of them, we loved it. So that's a personal example, or again, where a poster and a log line got me to go see a movie. And people say they don't judge a book by its cover. Everybody judges a book by its cover. That is they say you shouldn't. Everybody does. That's why having a good movie poster, because again, the max poster with the stairway, if it was high resolution, it'd be even better. It looks really chaotic. And in the short film, people who are picking up the splash drive outside of Memorial Hall are transported to a staircase they can never get off of. And it's about these three people looking for a girl who's disappeared. They find the same flash drive, end up in the same place, and they can't get out. And the very ending of the short film is the dog didn't get transported. They have a dog, they're walking a dog too. And at the end of the movie, right, they did it, how cool is this? They did an after credit scene.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is so cool. But the after credit scene is a girl walks up and goes, oh, hey, you're a cute dog. Where's your owner? Oh, and she picks up the flash drive, and that's how the movie ends. So, you know, but title, staircase, it's not staircase. Movie poster, it looks chaotic, which is really well done. And so, and then the one thing they didn't do, which they should have, and I'll know in the future, put the log line on the poster, right? You need to have a little one sentence description of the log line on the poster, so people know what it's about. Then they see, you know, oh wow, and then the staircase. This is kind of, you know, Michael West, one of my writers who writes great horror novels. He goes see it in a heartbeat, because you know that type of a movie is the thing he would want to go see. So, other questions? Beeler? Everybody here is old enough to get that reference. I love it. And when I showed that movie to my kids, I'm like, am I being a bad parent by showing them Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Am I being a I know, but I'm like, am I being a bad parent by doing this? No, okay. It didn't ruin me, and I saw it. Well, I don't think it ruined me. So yeah.
This doesn't have anything to do with the screenwriting, but can you talk a little bit about the LaGrange book fair?
Authors Fair. This will be the 10th year we've had the Authors Fair. It was originally in Madison, Indiana. I bought the company, the fair from the person that owned it, moved it to LaGrange. We always held it in April, and I have owned the fair for 6 years. We've had bad weather in April all 6 years. I've had tornadoes. The first year I owned it in LaGrange, tornadoes shut half the county down. The next year we got 2 inches of rain. The third year I said, dear Lord, just don't let it rain. We got 1.5 inches of snow, right? Last year, rain. And it's like, I personally have held with my fair, my book launches, I've had 10 major book signing events. The very first book signing was 75 degrees and sunny. The other 9 have all had bad to severe weather. So we've now moved it to August. It's going to be August 5th. I'm going to have a sign up page for it here soon. I've emailed the folks that attended last year that might want to attend this coming year. And I've gotten responses from the people who say they want to be there. So it looks like it's probably going to be the way that's going to be set up. It's $20 for a table. And then we keep 25% of whatever you sell. So you don't take payment at the table, we take payment at the center. We give you sheets, and in the night you give me your sheets, and later that day, I Venmo or PayPal you or write you a check for whatever you sold. People seem to really like
What was the
it.
percentage?
25%. So
It's going to be 102 degrees.
Yeah.
but we're partnering with Main Street LaGrange. Let's give one of our sponsors a major prompt. The problem what we've had in the last 6 years is people can't walk around LaGrange. LaGrange Historic District is really cool, lots of great restaurants, stores to go to, and the weather's been so bad, they run into the book fair and run home. But we want people to come and say there's gonna be a big concert Friday night. If you're out of town, if you're out of town watching this and want to come to LaGrange in August, come early on the 4th and go to the concert. And then on the next day, go to the Authors Fair. But if there is rain, it should only be brief, because most rain in August only lasts for 20 minutes. But it may be hot.
I'd say that.
As long as
I know. If I have threatened, California's drought is now over, but I have threatened to have my next book signing in California and have them pay me a lot of money. They're going to get rain. If I go,
Yeah.
what's the chance of randomly 9 out of 10 having bad weather on a random date 2 years in a row. It's almost impossible. Did it. So we had one where we had severe storms with hail the size of golf balls.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I love you. I want to get your book. I'll buy it online. Can't see you in person. I don't want my car damaged. You know, so, but August 5th, you'll be able to load in at 9 a.m. The fair's from 10 to 4 p.m. And then there's plenty of place to parking. We're going to have a food truck. There'll be things for you to eat. People who attend seem to really enjoy it. I get people every year already, when's the next fair? When's the next fair? That's how you know you're doing it at least right to some extent, because people ask you to come back. And we try to make load in and load out really easy. We have a lot of volunteers. It's a simple process. Having been to enough book signings and book fairs and conventions, I try to make this as easy on writers as possible. So if you come, and the only reason why it's $20 a table, tables used to be free, but we moved to a much nicer venue. City Place in LaGrange is a beautiful building. It's fantastic, and they charge me money for it. The people where we had it before did not. So I charge a nominal fee just to cover, and I only charge enough to cover the fee. We have 40 tables, and what I charge you $20 a table pays the fee. So I don't make any profit on you buying tables. That strictly pays for, we figure out ahead of time how much I need to charge to pay the room fee. So I don't make a profit off that.
So will we be able to sign up on a website or?
Yes, we'll have a link out soon. Now that I've finalized all the details and have you know, we've made an agreement. Sometime this week, I'll have a link up for it, and then you can sign up. So I know Sisters of Crimes had a table last year.
Yep.
So
I highly recommend it. Even the times that we've had the awful weather, it's been a bonding experience.
Yeah, last year I was there for, and the weather wasn't great, but the people who came were motivated, interested in books, they bought, and it's a beautiful space.
The space is gorgeous. That's
Yeah.
a great thing about an author's fair. People there spend money. They didn't show up just go, hey, let's look at the wonderful books and go home. They come, I want to find a wonderful book to put in my pack.
Yeah.
Yes, Katrina.
Volunteering was really fun. Like, I really enjoyed volunteering with my friends. We had all come together to volunteer for the event. And even though it was like raining and snowing, it was just really nice to like meet all the authors.
This also may let the count back to some people who got a no. I also try to make sure nice people get tables. If I know you're a jerk, you're never getting a table. Just don't even bother. It's just not. I don't want to spend a Saturday with you. I just don't. And so we try to, most of the people there are just super, the writers are really nice. They have excellent books. You know, even with the bad weather, we've always made a profit. I mean, so it's been worth doing. I would just like to have a day where we can get a lot of people, because it benefits you guys, right? You know, if we can double or triple the amount of people who come because the weather's nice, well, you also sell a lot more books. And I make a lot more money. It's like writing a screenplay. We're not a charity. We want to make money, right? That's why we're doing this. Most of us. Some people are writing just for the fun of it, and I applaud you. Good luck. I do it because I love it, but I really need help support my kids and help pay the bills, you know. So, or my wife will find somebody else who will. I have a lovely wife. I say that. I love her. She would not. She can't get rid of me now. It's, you know, we're too far down the flight. So, but my wife is a wonderful woman, particularly if you're watching this. You know, I love you dearly. So she can find YouTube. I better be careful. So, you know, but any other questions, comments, snide remarks? Remember, I have a thick skin. You can say whatever you want. Okay, well then, for those of you who are watching via Zoom, thank you for joining in, no matter where you are. Thank you all for having us, and this has been a really fun time.
Thank you.